Everyone dreams of living an uncommon life, and the best asset you have to achieve your dreams is you. Welcome to the Uncommon Wealth Podcast. We're going to introduce you to people who are living uncommonly. We're also going to give you some tools and strategies for building wealth and for pursuing an uncommon path that is uniquely right for you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Uncommon Wealth Podcast, where I'm your host, Philip Ramsey.
And I am Aaron Kramer.
Thank you, sir, for tuning in. We have an amazing guest for you today. I'm grateful that you guys are taking the time. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this crazy episode, crazy podcast about us trying to encourage people to take this wild leap of faith and jump in and believe in themselves, invest in themselves. We have Kristi Krayneski today. She has just jumped off this proverbial bridge. She is at the point where she was at a job for 16 years and she decided, you know what, I'm going to bet on myself. So that's why I wanted to get her on. Let me give you a quick bio. So Kristi is a business strategy consultant with years of experience as a chief operating officer in financial services. She has helped many high performance companies achieve high performance results. Welcome to the show, Kristi.
Welcome.
Thanks, Philip.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Kristi and I have known each other for quite some time. I've always enjoyed my experience with her. I kind of had her past life. That's how we got connected, in her financial services past. That's how we got connected. But I always was impressed. I think everybody that interacts with Kristi, you are always impressed. So how did you get to this business consulting? Like, how did you get to where you're at today? So let's just talk about what you do on a day-to-day level, and then kind of like rewind of like, how did you get to this point? Because I have a feeling a lot of your experiences have kind of led you to this point, but let's just first talk about what is it that you do?
Mm-hmm. Sure. As a chief operating officer, you tend to be someone who has a wide breadth of knowledge, a little bit of HR, a little bit of finance, how to help business processes get better. So sometimes when you're kind of in that executive level, you have a deep knowledge, like in finance or one particular area. But normally operating officers tend to kind of ebb and flow across the organization, different types of projects. That's how we ran into each other, Philip. And so really trying to take 15 years of what I would say is experience in a lot of different areas, and then really trying to capitalize on what is I'm really great at, and execution, implementation, motivating people through change, really trying to help an organization achieve something they really didn't even know if they had the right skill sets to get started.
And you have no idea how many people need what you are now going to do and help with. And I'm sure you've felt like that when you were in your financial services area, right? And I think that you were doing that more for the company that you were working with, but you always had this kind of feeling, and I felt this too, just in our business, you always had this consultative approach where you were like, well, yeah, like, let's talk through that again. Or what about this would work? So I could tell that you were always like leaning in and out to other people, but I felt like the company that you were in were like, but no, we need you to do that here. So what a fun thing now to do this every day, right?
Yeah, and being able to help different types of businesses. Again, I haven't always been in the financial services industry, have some background with trades and construction. And so really trying to take 25 years of a career and really kind of set it on a different course and have some autonomy of what types of projects to choose. Where do I feel like it aligns with the strengths that I can bring to the table for a company? So, it was a hard choice. Anytime you decide to reevaluate, 15 and a half, 16 years at a specific place, that took a lot of self-reflection. Relationships are a big deal for me. And I had a lot of them, not just internally, but with external partners and different people that I worked with in that company. So it was not an easy
decision
choice.
at all.
It wasn't quick.
Kristi, I gotta ask. So, like, through this long time frame that you said it helped build you, the 25 years, what are like the top 3 things that you feel like really helped mold you to like take this leap?
Oh, good. Aaron Kramer, everyone. Look at that.
Well, I'll say there's one thing I watched. My dad was a really dynamic guy. He worked for one company for 49 years, but he always had the desire to be self-employed, and he never took the leap. He always felt like he was putting too much at risk. Some of his ideas were kind of in the retail space, so it would have taken a lot of capital to get into that. But so I really didn't want to have a regret that I felt like I could do this, have a lot of background that, I was going to bring to the table. So that was one thing. The other is I really like the idea of choices, like the types of projects, the types of people you get to work with.
Yeah.
And when you work for one place, there was lots of work, and I was blessed to be able to work on a wide variety of things. But, I think I was getting to the point where it's like, I'd like to pick and choose some of the things I can influence and provide growth to. And that kind of leads me to the third one, which is a core value of mine. I was blessed with a lot of leadership training, and they poured a lot of resources into me in my 15 years. But one core value I go back to is I love to cultivate growth. And whether that's through people or watching a business achieve the next level of like revenue production, like that's always kind of been an underlying driver for
That's awesome.
What motivates me, what kind of inspires me to do great work. So how do I bring all of that together and kind of go out on my own? So
Envision Success is the company that you are now started or created or like partnered with? Like, how did that work?
Partnered with Heather Legg has been in business doing executive coaching and training for 16, 17 years. I really didn't necessarily have a desire to create like the website infrastructure, things like that.
I hear you, sister. I hear you.
I really wanted to focus more on really kind of being able to partner and come alongside some of the businesses that had approached me right out of the gate. So it made sense. And so I'm thankful. She has a really great reputation. She's welcomed me. We've got some ideas of different ways we can kind of utilize both our skill sets. So kind of excited to see where that leads. Don't have a lot of definites in that world yet, but
yeah, it's always easier when you can tag along and kind of follow a process that's already been proven, especially when you're ready to take this leap off of. And for those avid listeners, I know we have so many, they probably just heard the Golden Handcuffs podcast that we just did with Steven. And so you have to have some either challenge or obstacle that you're like, I just can't overcome. And these things in your past, like you talked about, are just so overwhelming. That drumbeat inside of you is starting to get like, I got to do this. But it's such a scary thing. And sometimes you get lost in just like the admin of like, well, how would I do my website? How would you do? And you never do anything. So to be able to attach yourself to Heather in this example and Envision Success gave you this like, okay, like, now I just have to go focus on the relationships that I know I already have, and I can follow in the process that we know that already works. And so what a great idea. So let me ask you this, because pricing is always this scary part. Maybe you just did Heather's, or maybe you didn't. Like, how did you come to your own like pricing with this going on? Yeah,
that's a great question. She definitely had some suggestions, and with her years of experience, weighed in on it. Although we do a little bit of a different type of work. I also have a great network. I mean, and so I know people who are self-employed and who are in the consulting, and who have even tried it and gone back to maybe a corporate job. So I would say, the first few weeks, spent a lot of time coffee. People were very generous in sharing even some of their fee schedules and then talking me through, like, early on their value, some of the obstacles they had. And I would say the other thing, I got a lot of advice on, like, this can be lonely. So figure out ways to, like, have collaborative timeframes with others. And, yes, the autonomy is great, but you're going to want to make sure that you have, like, these professional collaborative groups or you probably will go a little bit insane. Just when you're the social side of me.
When you're in the canoe and you're in the middle of the ocean, you can go crazy quick. So, very good advice.
Yeah. So I was fortunate in the fee space to have some people who have already kind of forged the path, share their knowledge, their insights. And then, of course, they're like, but it's always up to you.
Yeah. And you never know. Like, there's some people who I would say, let me just use my own example. Like, when I thought I was going to get into this financial services and managing people's money, I thought, I have all these relationships. They're going to give me all their money. It's going to be super easy. Couldn't be further from the truth. And it's not that they wouldn't, and they ended up being clients, praise the Lord. But at first, like, I think everyone was just like, hey, this is awesome, Philip, but you're just newer at this. Like, let's just see how this goes for a while. And so has that been your experience too, of, like, as many relationships as you have, it's not like they're not ready to use you, but maybe they're just kind of like, it's maybe not the right time now, right?
Yep. I would say it's been a little bit all over the board. I have one person who had worked with me pretty closely on a couple of projects over the last probably 5-10 years. I didn't have to explain what I did. It was like they've already seen it in action.
Well, so good. Yeah.
And then I would say other people, because chief operating officers are not necessarily the public face. I mean, you're more known in the organization than outside the organization. So although great relationship, have a lot of experience, maybe networking together. The best probably piece of advice I got from someone like that was, you need to start practicing your value proposition and get really great at it.
Yeah.
It's a hard one.
Yeah. So what is it? What would you say your value proposition is after you've now worked on it and honed it? Give it to me, sister.
Well, I think I'm still doing that. I'm not. I think my biggest hurdle is I don't like to talk about myself.
Yes.
Or brag
Kristi.
about myself.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yes.
That's what we're here for. Pull that out.
Yeah. So if I had to, off the top of my head, it's I help companies bring productivity and profitability through fractional COO projects, helping you generate revenue and productivity.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think that's good. And also too, like, I've never had, they call that an elevator speech for those people who aren't in sales. And, like, I get Tourette's when somebody's like, well, what's your elevator speech? I'm like, what? Like, and here's why. And I think you're the same person. You and I are like kindred spirits. Here we are. I feel like it just seems like so canned when you have to pull out something and you've said it 9,000 times. Like, I know that person of, like, oh yeah, you've rehearsed that so many times. It makes me sick to my stomach. And so what I always do, and I think this will be, you can adopt this and do what you want with it. But I would say, well, here, let me just tell you what I did yesterday. Because, like, to really describe what I do, I don't really know if we have enough time for 30 seconds. But yesterday, I just helped 2 people start their own business and bet in themselves, show them that they're the best asset, and they had assets that they can use in order to go get their dreams and get excited about life. And that was yesterday. I haven't thought about that. I mean, I just literally just said that was yesterday. So there is something natural about that you're like, man, I want a little Kristi in my life. Like, I want what you're doing for other people. And also this whole COO thing to help people get efficient and things like that. And there's this gray area in businesses where you're starting to grow and, like, you kind of need a COO, but there's no way you'd be able to hire a COO. So it's a perfect niche for you to go in and help people scale that up. And then just to edify you, it just sucks to talk about yourself. So it's way easier to talk about other people and them getting traction. And then you're kind of the Yoda. Like, don't be the Luke Skywalker, because nobody really wants to hear that. But you can be the Yoda, and you can tell the Luke Skywalkers that you just trained and kind of push the attention off to them. So I'm totally get there. So you take this jump and this leap. You climb. You're in 16 years, financial services. You get up on this bridge. You know that your parachute's packed. You look over the edge and you lean forward and you take this jump. Okay. And this was like what? A month ago? Like, this hasn't been long, just so our listeners understand. How long ago was that?
No, about 5 weeks.
5 weeks.
5 weeks.
Which,
man, we're in that adrenaline thrill.
Yeah, that adrenaline thrill where like the parachute hasn't opened yet, but the momentum is starting to go down, which is scary, right? And that's why you have to have a community. But what was your first day like? Like, your first day, not in financial services. What did you do? What did Kristi do?
Well, I started to write down everybody who I thought I might want to chat with, might want to talk with. I mean, you were one, just kind of, here's what's happening. Here's the news. I also really started to, I would say, dream a little bit. Like, what could you be doing? And then I'm not going to lie, the opposite side of that coin is, I'm not in my head. I'm like, what did you just do? Yeah. Like,
walking out of those doors for the last time, you got to be like, I'm excited and I want to bawl all at the same time.
Yeah. I do go from being like, oh, that's exciting, I better do more work around that, and to,
what is happening?
Stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, Kristi, I love your honesty.
Kristi, I gotta know.
But if it doesn't feel like that, then I think it just shows it has meaning. Like,
yes, keep saying it.
Something about it.
What did you have a defining moment where you're like, yes, this is what I love doing? Because you bring a lot of value to people and help them, and seeing people succeed and what you can bring brings a lot of happiness. Because if not, then you wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah,
you love helping people.
What was that moment where you're like, okay, I'm doing it.
Well, I really love to see somebody learn something new or actually achieve something. Like, when we started 3 months before, they're like, no way we're doing that. And I'm like, yeah, I think we can do it. Yeah. I think this is possible. It's that moment of like, it's between like the leadership part of it, the tactical, like, application of just moving forward. Like, the more you take the steps forward, something starts to happen. The energy starts to change. I often joke to people, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Because I have a wide breadth of experience, knowledge, different industries, different things. But at the end of it, I love to see people achieve something that they were dreaming about, but they honestly thought, no way we're going to be able to do that. And I was fortunate to work for a company that allowed me to work on projects that were really kind of changing the landscape of the company from the inside. And so I hope in this journey that I get to be able to have that same kind of impact for different types of businesses and the clients that I can work with. So
yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you said it, because I think my definition of mentorship is a little bit what you said. It's like when somebody's pouring into me, they see more potential in me than I see in myself, and they're willing to prove it to me. Like, does that make sense? Like, that's kind of what you are. There's your elevator speech a little bit, but like, and here's another thing. I want to take kind of 2 steps back and like, just this is the kind of person Kristi is, like, in a character perspective. Like, her first day, she started writing down names of people that she could maybe go reach out to. It wasn't like, well, I had this list for 4 months because I was already checked out of my old gig. Like, you finished strong. I can only know, I know your character. So you finished strong, and then you started like, let's go, day one, which is really cool. A lot of people would not do that, especially when they're going to do a big, scary thing like you were going to do, but not Kristi. Like, you stayed in it, you finished strong. So that's a huge deal. And I think it says a lot about your character.
Yeah.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, totally. Switching gears. What is your process when you meet a client, or like, what do you take them through to kind of like give this consultative approach, but also get enough insight to say like, hey, this is, I think, a couple things. And like you said, like the financial services company that you were with was really an innovator, and it's kind of in your DNA to like, let's just scrap it all. Like, I think there could be a better way. And I love that DNA of yours. Like that is your true, I think, underlying core value of like, hey, things don't have to always be the same. But what's your process to try to like understand the client so much that you can start giving them advice?
A lot of times you got to start, most people will kind of give you the high level of like, we're trying to do this. We've maybe 6 months, 12 months. We just can't seem to get it executed, or, maybe we don't have the right people doing the right things. It goes back to kind of some of those simple sales principles. I think you have to be asking a lot of questions, and I think you have to be listening. And I think one of the things that, I don't know if it's my gift or just an innate strength, but being able to like connect dots when people are talking about the problem, like they may say something and then a few minutes later they say this, and it's like, well, those two things might actually go together and you haven't really thought about that. Right. And I know, Philip, in working with you have a similar quality in, I think when you worked in trust and wealth management and, you're talking about people's legacies and their life, and right. You have to be really great at listening, and then also being able to either explain it in a way they've never thought, or connect dots that they've not been able to connect because they're emotionally connected to it, or, there's lots of things. So that wealth management background and trust background, I mean, I've seen the best sides of families, and I've seen some of the worst sides of families in 15 years of trust work. Yeah. And I think just walking into the conversation, knowing that I need to be learning, a lot of times I don't have the solutions out of the gate, because you do have to get to know the situation, the people. There's a wide grouping of things that come together to achieve like a strategic goal. Emotional components start to play, much like the wealth management.
Yeah. And like, kudos to Heather, because like, you really can't teach that. Like, those are the two right answers to that. It's ask questions and listen. Like, it's not just ask questions and then push them into a corner, because this is what you're going to do. It's listen. And then I would say, not only is it, and I think you're great at connecting the dots, but it's also sometimes to show people like the dots that you thought were connecting are completely opposite of what they are. Does that make sense? Like, there's sometimes people come to me as like, hey, I want to retire. I'm 55. Perfect. Where's your money going? My 401k. Well, you realize like it's not really easy to get that out before 59 and a half. Like, so what you're saying and what you're doing are kind of different, like, let's just talk through that. Right. And like, and so sometimes those questions are like to show them a little mirror of like, hey, like, help me understand how this works. And a lot of times they'll like, oh, like, interesting. I never really put the two together. I just thought I was supposed to do this. Right. And I think that's
what you guys do and have always done, in what kind of that trust background, it's like you are really trying to solve some pretty complex problems that have a lot of really good answers. Like, there's not a one size fits all. Unfortunately, for retirement planning, there's a million ways to get there.
Right.
So, I mean, I've never really felt like you could solve a problem for somebody without really listening to what they've done, how they've tried to solve it themselves, what they're actually hoping to achieve. And my hope is that I give them that whole, like, a different perspective on how to solve the problem. Like, here's 3 different alternative solutions. Have you tried any of these?
Oh, so good. And then I'm going to let Aaron talk, because I'm just like totally kaiboing this whole interview. Sorry. Just love you, Kristi. So not only is it solving problems for companies, like, I want to and you probably do this. So if I'm going to cast a vision for you, I think it's important that they also quantify the problem in dollars. If we solve this problem, how much would it mean for your company? Does that make sense? Like, and I feel like I do a very poor job of like monetizing the value that you bring, like that we bring in a service aspect, or you could bring. And so I think that's something that is, if I was sitting where you were at, I would need somebody like me to say, hey, see a lot of me and you, like have them quantify what the problem means in dollars. Like, gosh, if we could solve this, it would probably mean that. Like, okay, then this is a pretty big deal, like, and now we just have something that we're all looking at, like, all right, let's solve this thing. And then it's like, I'm going to do this however I have to, because it's so worth it. Right. You're going to say something. Sorry.
It's funny you say that, because when I first started, like, if I go down this path, and I think when you're not necessarily motivated to do something by money, that becomes the hard thing to quantify for people. I mean, but I really thought, what if you paid me like a monthly fee and then a percentage of whatever that.
Oh, see, you're amazing.
But it is hard to quantify, and always has been for like business process improvements or, staff culture. When people start to align and it takes away so many problems for a business owner. Like, you don't have the meetings after the meetings. You don't have, 26 people who run into your office a week to talk about, whatever that week's problem is. So those are hard to quantify. They're valuable, and they happen when you're really, when you get the right mix of change management, process improvement, strategic planning implementation. But it's always been a little bit of the hard thing in an operations world to quantify with a dollar amount. Like, I can quantify sales revenue all day long for you. I can tell you how the process generates better money. Right. I can't always tell you, because we saved 15 minutes here and the staff's no longer like pinging me 3 times a day.
That's valuable. Yeah, that's totally valid. And like, even like thinking of our posts, it's like, well, how much business has your podcast brought you? I don't know. Like, how would you even measure it? Unless you're like, you need to use the code word this, when you get like, which we're not doing. So I just keep podcasting. Anyway, what are your questions, buddy?
I don't know if I have any questions, but I do want to bring out the fact that we're sitting here listening to you, and I know you guys have a relationship, so you guys are like hitting it off, and I'm like catching up here. But I think it's like for our listeners to like really realize the fact that like you've made a comment about when you're a COO, you're not the face. Like, you're always in the background. And the fact that you are okay with being in the background and rocking it there, and you're not the one jumping out being like, look at me, like I'm amazing. Yeah. Really shows me, and like sees like how amazing you are, and like what you want to do, and how much joy you really get out of just helping somebody else be the star,
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's amazing. I think people need to realize that's an amazing quality, and it really shows like how great of a coach you are.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I get a lot of joy in coming alongside others and being able to figure out what motivates them, being able what can make you like elevate to the next level, like whether that's the business or the person. I have spent a lot of years. I don't even know if you know this, Philip, but I was a softball pitcher.
I can see it now. I can see it as you say it.
And I think like the years of practicing, being coached, I mean, I went from what I would say is like a B team person in middle school to, all city softball, played a little bit in college. Like, I know when you have the right people coaching you and developing you, to Philip's point, people will do amazing things that they didn't even think they were possible. And so that part of it's always been, I think that's why I've coached youth sports. I loved, probably one of the things I'm going to miss is the people. I mean, I led a lot of people. When I left the bank, I had 14 direct reports at the longest who were also running departments. So that's a piece I'm going to have to find a new space and how to feed it. I don't think you need direct authority to be a leader with somebody or a mentor or a coach. So just finding a new avenue for that.
Yeah, you really touched on something that's interesting. When we're just growing up, like we'll always seek out coaches. Like when hey, I want to learn how to do this, get a coach. Right. But then when it like matters the most, business, for example, it's like, well, let's just try it. Like we don't keep that going. And I feel like that's such a miss because like I've said this before, but like the cheat code of life is mentorship or getting a coach, right? Because they can even help you guide through, even when you're in the trenches. Hey, this is what you need to do. This is what hasn't gone well for me. Maybe you should do something different here. But it's interesting. We just don't seek that out. And what I want all the people who are listening now is like, seek this out, whether it's Kristi, whether it's us, but do it, because there is so much wisdom in having somebody pour into your situation that you know, like, and respect. Right. And then take their advice because they will take ownership if it doesn't work. Right. So that's powerful, right? Like, all right, I'm going to try it. And then it's Aaron's fault if it doesn't work. Not really, but like, at least I have somebody to process through, like, hey, I tried this and it didn't work. Let's work through this. And so, good for you.
Yeah, I was really fortunate in the company I worked for. They give you a lot of opportunities to have different leadership training, different opportunities to kind of expand your skill set. I think, a lot of times, like if you're only looking at a dollar value, would you ever do anything? And again, it's being able to really articulate the intangibles, like personal development and growth. People are happier, they stay longer, they can expand skill sets. I actually started with my company. I took the job to get benefits because we had a construction company. So, health insurance benefit rules all, right? And then it was close to my kids' school because they were little. And so like, I didn't make this big leap to a 16-year career. Those were my two motivating reasons.
Oh, wow.
So, but I was really a benefactor of a lot of really great training, great people. I walked out of there way different than I walked in there.
I was just going to say, like, you brought up the golden handcuffs, and I'm sitting here listening. So you just walked into a job because it was really convenient for you and your family at the time, 16 years ago. And so it's probably not like you just walked into this golden handcuff job where you're making a lot of money, but I'm just thinking COO, like, it's not a small position.
Yeah.
So
worked your way up.
Yeah, you worked your way up. So kudos to you. That means that really shows you your talent, what you have.
And you're patient.
Yeah. But then to walk away from a COO job.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about snapping the golden handcuffs and be like, screw this, I can do it better by myself.
Yes. Yeah, I can go help. I think the motivating factor for you though is like you can go help people in a different way.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And there is this entrepreneurial side. I took a leap when I was 22 and bought a company with absolutely no experience. But I didn't even know what I was risking. So to be honest, and owned that with my ex-husband for about 15 years. Wow. And he still runs that business, but I got out of it and kind of focused my energy on building a career, having the stability, all of those things my life really dictated and needed, given my circumstances. And you're right. I started at a very entry-level job. I'd never actually worked at a bank. I had some investment experience. So I started with the trust department, but I was cutting checks and doing all the day-to-day paperwork, all of that type of stuff. And I just have always found, and even like if I were to start at a different company, I know I can't turn this part of my brain off, which is like, hey, I know I could make that better. Are you okay with me jumping in? Are you okay with me figuring out how to make this like work faster, better? And so again, very fortunate that the company I worked for, they were they were always willing. I mean, I was always in the investment and trust world, but I played BSA officer for 3 or 4 years. So I have a lot of experience in that. I've run compliance exams. I've, all that fun regulatory stuff that we all love and enjoy. And then at the end of it, I also got to do some of our mergers and acquisitions. And wow, what a learning experience. I mean, talk about everything from people to system change to
emotions.
Yeah. They run high. So but I think I always gravitate. I find that like once I master something, like it's time to go learn something new. Yeah. Somebody else who's probably better at it can take it, love it long term, make it better. I just really like the challenge.
And correct me if I'm wrong, like for our listeners to know this, because like you're helping consult people, but for you to build your way up from an entry level all the way up to where you did, that means that you're truly like working on yourself. You've taken on you've had your own mentors, and like so you're doing what you even preach like for yourself. Yeah,
right. It's good.
Yep, I think that's a great question. I don't have one mentor. I've always sought out people who tend to have a better skill set than I do in something, and I admire it. Yes. I would say that, Philip's been very complimentary of me, but what I've always appreciated in him is his ability to relate, connect, have a really meaningful conversation in a really short period of time. Like he can pick up cues and I have certain really lifelong friends that I'm a little blunt, plain speaking. I grew up in a family where you just said what was on your mind and you forgot about kind of the, soften the edges. So that's not always the best kind of leader to have. So, if I had one of those moments where, maybe my very frank and blunt side came out, I had 2 or 3 people that I really liked their approach, but I knew that they would come at it with a softer, probably more people-oriented side of it. So I've always really valued finding 2 or 3 skill sets in somebody that I know I need to improve on, and then have them. And I think that's really what I started with on that list that I told Philip, like, who are the people that I know do business development really well? I want to go figure out from them what I should be doing because they're successful and I like how they do it. I also met with people who had been in the industry, but had way different like lenses of banking and financial services. So tell me if somebody talked to me about, debit card payments and all of that structure, what are the main things I should be really focused on? Can I rely on you to be a resource for me? So I think anybody who thinks they can go it alone, and I think back to what Philip said earlier, like at a certain point as we get to be adults, we think we have to, like, we don't need the feedback anymore. We don't need the coaching there's a lot of things that I'm really strong at. There's a lot of things that I know there's people that I know are way better than I am at it.
Yeah. And then to add to that, it's like, the fact that as we get older, we think that we can see our own holes, like our own mishaps. It's like, it's crazy, like that we get that confident. It's like, no, you can't see your gaps. And that's why having a consultant or a coach is great, because you just can't see what you can't see, but they can see it. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I really I firmly believe, like, be you. Like, I can't be Philip. Like, I can't sit there and story tell and, but I can come in and I can play a compliment to that type of environment. And maybe that's age, maybe that's experience. Like, I think being able to embrace what your strengths are and then always focus and build your weaknesses, but I think if you surround yourself with really great people who are stronger in different areas than you are, it's almost like having your own leadership team to build you personally.
Yeah.
Hey, talk about your spouse, your husband.
Okay.
How instrumental has he been in this pursuit for you to go after Envision Success?
Yeah. I would say he believes more in me than I probably believe in myself.
Mm-hmm.
He is not a risk taker. So I would say when we first started contemplating like, hey, I'm not going to have the corporate job.
Mm-hmm.
I really felt like he'd have a lot of like questions, things we were going to have to work through. And he's like, no, I think I'd bet on you. He goes, I'd rather bet on you.
Heck yeah.
That's awesome.
Love that guy.
Yeah, he's really, like I said, like if I'm in the moment where like, what did I just do?
What did I just do? Right. Yeah.
He's like, gosh, you're a month in.
Right.
And every day he's like, you need to tell me 2 things good that happened. I can tend to be more of a realist, like, oh my gosh, when's the day? Like, if I don't have any money generated that I have to go to work for somebody else.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's like, why do you want to do that?
So we're fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think you're right.
No,
like, you got to be true to yourself, Kristi. Like, you knew there was something inside of you. You're like, I gotta do this. Like this has been the cultivation of everything in my life. Now I just need to go and pursue it. And so like your dad, I think this is really interesting that he never took a step off, like he always would contemplate getting up on that ledge and jumping off with his parachute. He just never did. And like, you got to do it. Like at the end of the day, you don't want any regrets. And I've seen so many people and their journey. No one has ever wished that they're like, I wish I was back on that bridge. Like you can always land on another bridge. Like, but the experience that you'll have if you don't like keep going, like it's priceless. It is priceless. And the fact that you're taking the journey, you're taking the step, you're having this leap of faith, you're feeling the air between your, like through your hair as you're falling. And like, that is why the support system is so powerful. And that's why I wanted to give you a little bit of time for your spouse, because I already know the answer every time I ask that question on every one of our podcasts. I know the answer, but it's powerful just to be able to give them time and kind of edify the sacrifices and the encouragement that they are for us, right? Because it is important.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't know that I would have done it without, if he'd have been adamantly against it, it would have made the journey 10 times harder. Right. Okay. So how do our listeners hear more about you and what you're doing and then hire you, things like that? Sure. So the website's Envision Success, inc.com. My background profiles on the website. I would say LinkedIn. You can look up Kristi Krayneski. We are kind of contemplating some new ways to utilize kind of the executive coaching and then kind of my strategic background and goal and implementation pieces. So look forward to maybe having some of that, figured out and in motion in the next 2 or 3 months. So, yeah.
Good. Okay. I want to say this, kind of to wrap this whole thing up, kind of land the plane here. Like, I know that you've been only doing this, quote unquote, for 5 weeks, but that is such a lie. Like, you've been doing this your whole life. And if you think about it, like from the beginning of this podcast, you were saying that, hey, I saw my father having all these aspirations and just never taking the leap. Right. So like, even from as young as you were, like this started in you early, and then you always enjoyed flexibility. Right. And you knew that the only way that you can do this is by doing something on your own. And then you've always loved cultivating growth with other people. So you tell me when that started. It's a lot sooner than 5 weeks ago. I'll tell you that. And everything has been, it's kind of like that silly story where somebody's in the coffee shop and sees somebody drawing on a napkin, and it's a beautiful drawing. And the guy comes up and is like, hey, I'd love to have that drawing. The guy's like, it's $10,000. And he's like, what? Like, it's just on a piece of napkin. And the guy's like, well, this has taken me years to perfect this. And the guy's like, I don't know how to pay $10,000 for a napkin. And he's like, well, that's okay. That's fine. And then the guy gets up and just throws it away. But here's the point. The point is that he has spent hours and hours perfecting his craft, and you have too. And that's valuable because you have so many things and experiences that you can help people specifically get out of a crunch, that crunch that is valuable to their business. So you've been doing this way longer than 5 weeks. Now you just get the opportunity to serve other people. And that's exciting. So kudos for you for taking the leap. I love your story. I love to be an encouragement. I love your husband. Good for him. But if you ever need any encouragement, I'm right here to help you. And I know our listeners too will be encouraged by this story, because a lot of times we'll get through this and I took this jump 7 years ago, and then they're flying, and it's like, well, it's almost unattainable a little bit. But there's some of our listeners who are like where you were at, maybe, 3 months ago, of like, hey, I think I might do this, and how do you start thinking through this? And so it's just really encouraging to hear your story, and you just took this leap, and it's exciting. It's scary, all the feelings, I'm sure, but you're going to be such a success.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I will call you if I need any pep ups.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. You've been listening to Uncommon Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Ramsey.
And I'm Aaron Kramer.
Until next time, go get on the bridge. Jump off. Your parachute will open. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
That's all for this episode. Brought to you by Uncommon Wealth Partners. Be sure to visit uncommonwealth.com to learn more about our services. Don't miss an episode as we introduce you to inspiring people who are actively pursuing an uncommon life.